Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya.
Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya.
Vivekananda Suraye.
Vivekananda Suraye.
Satchit Sukha Swarupaya.
Satchit Sukha Swarupaya.
Swamine Tapaharine.
Swamine Tapaharine.
Where did we leave Swamiji behind yesterday?
Chicago. He lost everything.
Chicago railway station platform. He had lost the credentials, the addresses, and his money. He came out of the station to inquire his way about. He talked to a few people. All of them looked at him very strangely. None of them replied. Until one person started shaking his fist. Swamiji was wondering what is happening. Don't they know English? Then he heard one more person mutter something in a strange language. The only word he could understand was politsai. What is politsai? Police. I'll hand you over to the police. Then Swamiji remembered that was the area. It is not the station from which he had left. It is a different station in a different area. And that was the area inhabited by the new German immigrants. They were fresh in Chicago. They didn't know English. And they saw this weird figure, so they got scared. Swamiji came back to the railway station platform. He decided to spend the night there. No food, no water. Americans were then scared of drinking water in the public. Only later they knew how to purify the water, and now they have the water supply at home. And that water supply at home is probably purer than our bottled water. They take so much of care. So Swamiji had to spend the night somewhere. He spent the night in a box car. There are two Americans here. I think they know what is meant by box car. Our Indians don't know what is a box car. They mistook it for a box. So there are pictures drawn of Swami Vivekananda curled up in a box, cardboard box, on the platform. Box car is a goods wagon. That is where homeless wanderers spend the night. I think they are called hobos, right? Hobos spend the night. Swamiji spent the night, I think it is probably 8th of September, 2 days before the Parliament of Religions, like a homeless wanderer in the boxcar of the station. Imagine what would have happened if in the night the boxcar had been attached to an engine and taken away. Goods wagon. Again, we would not be here. SVYASA would not be here. Swamiji would probably have landed up somewhere else. Morning he got up. He had been sleeping the whole night on a bed of straw. Already he had a weird dress. He was not feeling clean. Now straw was sticking to his dress and to his hair. This time he came out. He didn't have water to wash his face. Then it occurred to him, the city of Chicago is on Lake Michigan, one of the 5 Great Lakes. He thought, if I make my way to the lake, I can at least wash my face and find out if I can risk drinking some water. But whom to ask? It was daytime. Yesterday was nighttime. This is daytime. People avoided him even more. Then he thought, I will go on sniffing the air. In whichever direction the air appears to be moist, I'll start walking in that direction. Is that the way to locate a water mass? He roamed and roamed and roamed until around 11 o'clock in the morning, he found himself in front of this house. 541 Dearborn Avenue. It was a dead end, cul-de-sac. To the left, there was no road. You can see the curb there. The road stops at that particular spot. Swamiji sat in front of that house on the curb and started thinking to himself, why are these things happening to me? Did the Holy Mother read Sri Ramakrishna's prophecy properly? Then why this? He thought and thought until he got tired out. And then he said, O Lord, let thy will be done. Surrender. The Lord's will was done. The door opposite opened. A lady came out, climbed down the steps, crossed the street, came to where Swamiji was sitting and said, according to Swamiji, the sweetest words I have ever heard in my life, Sir, are you a delegate to the Parliament of Religions? He said, yes. She said, please come in. She took him inside her house. Mrs. Ellen W. Hale, the second mother of Swamiji in the United States, and she was the only one whom he used to address as mother throughout his life. He was extremely fond of her, and she was extremely fond of him. She took him into her house, took him upstairs, gave him a room. Now Swamiji had a chance to have a wash, to clean up his face, and then he had a change of clothing. He could change his dress, and he got a nice hot lunch. And after lunch, the lady took him in a horse carriage to the office of the Parliament of Religions, which was very close by. When Swamiji went to the office, first time he had gone to the office, he had received those unpleasant news. But this time, they welcomed him with open arms. Yes, we have received the recommendations from Professor Wright. Please sign in the register. He signed in the register and became registered as a delegate on behalf of Hinduism. Then they thanked Ellen Hale and told her, thank you very much, madam, for having brought Swamiji here. We were all wondering where he had disappeared. And he told her, we have made arrangements for Swami Vivekananda to stay with a family very close to the office of the Parliament of Religions or the venue of the Parliament of Religions, and he will be accommodated there, the Leon family. This was George Hale, the husband of Ellen Hale. And Swamiji was fond of giving nicknames to people who were very close to him. So he gave a nickname to George Hale, Father Pope, and to Ellen Hale, Mother Church. He used to write letters to her, my dear Mother Church, and they loved it because they had a son who was no longer living with them, and they saw in Swamiji their son. They adopted him as their son. They had two daughters who had two cousins, all of them living together in that house, and they became Swamiji's sisters. Harriet McKinley, Isabel McKinley were the cousins. Mary Hale, Harriet Hale were the daughters of the Hale family. Of the four of them, the closest to his heart was Mary. The two of them used to exchange letters like anything. And it is to this Mary that he wrote a letter later from Almora, may I be born again and again to serve my God the poor. He used to confess to her all his innermost thoughts. But whenever he wanted an advice, he would write to Harriet Hale. And Harriet Hale, like an elder sister, would give him advice. She was the only one older to Swamiji. All the others were younger. And this is Reverend John Henry Barrows, chairperson of the General Committee, to whom Professor Wright had sent the recommendations and credentials. This is Mrs. Leon, in whose family, in whose house Swamiji was accommodated. Mind you, that was the 9th afternoon. 2 more days for the Parliament. When he went there, it was rather late in the evening. Her husband had gone to sleep. She received him, but was a little worried. She took Swamiji inside, gave him a room. Everything was wonderful. She went upstairs to her husband's room. He had already gone to bed. Next morning, early morning, she went up to her husband's room, woke him up and told him, "John, we have a problem. The Parliament people have sent a brown gentleman." Why was she worried? The same afternoon, they were expecting 3 guests from Tennessee. You know, Tennessee was a cotton state which had a lot of slavery. Slavery had been abolished, but prejudices had not gone. Her worry was, when these 3 people from the deep south come to stay with us, what will they think of Swami Vivekananda, a brown gentleman? Will it lead to any problem? This was the thought in her mind. So John told her, "Don't worry, I will take care of it. I'll go downstairs, talk to this brown gentleman, convince him, take him to a hotel. We will of course pay for the hotel, so this problem will be solved." He came down. Swamiji was already up, sitting in the parlor. After half an hour, John came upstairs and told his wife, "If those 3 characters from Tennessee come and create any problem, throw them out. I would rather have this brown gentleman as my guest." Luckily, nothing happened. When those 3 people came, they were charmed by the personality of Swamiji, and it was a happy family once again. Their granddaughter, their widowed daughter, and a granddaughter was staying with them. And the granddaughter remembered later Swami Vivekananda. She was just a short girl, and she has written her reminiscences. What wonderful things she has written. They were making such a big fuss about him, but I thought he was so much fun. Only later I came to know what a great personality he was. Swamiji could be a child with children. Mr. John Leon. Can you guess what nickname Swamiji would have given him? Look at his mustache. There is one sea creature which has 2 buck teeth.
Walrus.
What is that?
Walrus.
Walrus. So he became Father Walrus. Did he give a nickname to Mrs. Leon? No. He respected her too much. She was his grandmother. You know, the affection given by these American families to Swamiji is simply inexplicable. He had not even spoken to them enough. They did not know his qualities, but even then, charming personality. Swamiji had that captivating personality. One of the yoga siddhis, Ishitva, Vashitva, attracting people wherever he went. So the 11th September dawned. This was the building specially constructed for the Parliament of Religions, known as the Art Institute. Today it is an art institute. It is a museum. As you enter the foyer, there are 2 halls, one to the right, one to the left. The hall to the left was called the Hall of Columbus, and the hall to the right was called Hall of Washington. Some of the lectures had to be repeated in Washington because capacity of the Hall of Columbus was 3,000. And right from the first day onwards, whenever Swamiji spoke, there was a minimum audience of 7,000. So Swamiji had to repeat some of his lectures in the Hall of Washington. People would be standing, waiting anxiously. All the delegates assembled by 9:30 in the morning. Walking distance from the family house of Leons. Swamiji also was one of the delegates. He presented himself there. 9:30, they were arranged into a procession. 10 o'clock, a bell in the fairgrounds rang 10, representing 10 o'clock by the clock, representing the 10 religions represented in the Parliament of Religions, major religions. Music started, organ music, church music, and the whole procession came slowly inside. The delegates climbed up the steps and sat in their allotted seats. The audience was standing, 3,000. They were standing. Audience was only by invitation. Nobody could enter otherwise. The program started with benediction. Just as our programs commence with a prayer, that program started with a benediction. First, according to Protestant religion, Protestant Christianity. Then, Roman Catholic Christianity. Because both were represented in Chicago. Chicago basically was a Roman Catholic country, but there were lots of Protestants living there, who contributed to the Roman Catholic population of Chicago. Even today, the Roman Catholic population of Chicago is represented by one ethnic group. Which is that? Italians. Have you heard of the mafia? Huh? Italians who came and settled down in Chicago and started that group, Mafia, Cosa Nostra. You must have seen the movie or heard of the movie Godfather, yes. Marlon Brando's. There they show you the power of Cosa Nostra. When I was in US, somebody gifted me with a box. I asked him, what is it, candies? They said, no, open it and see. I opened it, 4 CDs, DVDs on the history of the mafia in Chicago. That is why there was a sizable Italian population, and they constituted the Roman Catholic group. So benedictions were read in both. Then the chairperson of the technical sessions, Mari Snell, Mari, M-A-R-I-E, hyphen Snell, it's not a lady. Mervyn Mari Snell came to the dais and then read out the address of welcome, welcoming all the delegates. Each one of the delegates was then requested to come forward and to reply. And Swamiji's famous speech is known as reply to the address of welcome. The day wore on, people came, some of them read their speeches, some of them were extempore, and they went back and sat in their places. Some of them were mildly applauded, some of them were widely cheered. The applause or the cheering depended more on politics than on the quality of the speaker. African delegates were given a warm welcome. Why? America had just then abolished slavery, and they wanted to show their solidarity with the black races. Then Chinese were given a very warm welcome. China had just then started a war with England, which came to be known as the Boxer War. You know, England has always accused China of exporting opium around the world. The story is exactly the opposite. It was England which introduced opium into China from Afghanistan. And later, they started accusing China of being yellow devils. And the Chinese got fed up one day and they waged a war. And you know, America had no love lost for England. They themselves had fought the Britishers in American soil and driven them back. You must have heard of the famous Boston Tea Party, where the whole consignment of tea from England to Boston was drowned in the ocean, and that is the way the revolution started. I told you already, Philadelphia, the fathers of the nation signed the declaration, and the war started from Philadelphia, went to Boston, with the Boston Tea Party. So any country against England was welcomed by the Americans. Americans and Britishers have always had a very interesting love-hate relationship. They can't manage without each other, but they don't seem to have much of a good opinion about each other. The Americans normally say, in the Second World War, the Britishers fought to the last American dollar and the last French soldier. That means they never contributed anything to the Second World War. There is a contempt they used to have. What about Japanese delegates? They were also given a warm welcome. Why? They had just then waged a war with Russia and won it. And you know, Russia and America have always been at loggerheads. So Russia is our enemy, Japan is Russia's enemy, so our enemy's enemy is our friend, politics. So the Japanese were given a warm welcome. Lunchtime, the group broke, reassembled after lunch. Now Swamiji started getting message after message from the chairperson to come and speak. He was sitting in one corner, to our right corner, but on the stage to the left corner. Extreme left is Veerchand Gandhi from Bombay, Jainism. Dharmapala Anagarika from Ceylon, representing Buddhism. And Swami Vivekananda, see his turban, safa, with the tail hanging on the left shoulder. And to his left, Father Mori, a Roman Catholic prelate from Paris. Father Mori went back home that night to his sister's place and told the family what happened. Swamiji started getting note after note from the chairperson to come and speak. Swamiji went on shaking his head. I told you already how you shake your head when you say no. Those of you who want to go to United States better keep this in mind. You go there and a girl proposes marriage to you and you want to say yes. Don't say yes, yes. What will the girl think? You are not interested and she will go away. Yeah, this is a typical Indian habit. Yes? No. So Swamiji said, no, not yet, not yet. Father Mori says, I was wondering why the young man is sitting still. Then I noticed his face had broken out into a sweat. His hands were trembling. I asked him, why don't you go and speak? He said, I am nervous. Don't you see my hands trembling? Don't you see sweat breaking out from my face? I am nervous. Then I thought, why did he come at all if he is nervous? Finally, the last note came from the chairperson. Either you come and speak now, or you will not be allowed to speak in the parliament at all. We have given special permission to you to become a delegate. Then Father Mori says, the young man muttered something under his breath. There were two prayers. One prayer to Sri Ramakrishna and the other prayer to Saraswati. You must be familiar with that. Ya kundendu tusharahara dhavala, ya shubhra vastravrata. Having recited both of them, he heaved a deep sigh, got up, came to the rostrum, stood there, crossed his arms over his chest, and said those 5 simple words: Sisters and brothers of America. The entire audience stood up, started applauding. Swamiji was utterly confused. They applauded for 2 minutes. Normally you don't applaud before a speech commences. It is a polite applause. For example, if a speaker comes on the stage, you politely applaud it. Not the way the audience applauded, cheering all the time. What was the first impression of Swamiji? They don't want to listen to me. They are asking me to go away. What is this called? Barracking. You know what barracking is? You know a speaker is a lousy speaker. He comes to the stage, then you start applauding. How do you applaud?
Loud.
Hey. Slow applause. Slow applause means get lost. We are not interested in you. Swamiji was about to come back to his seat. Then the audience sat down and he gave this extempore speech for 2.5 minutes. Let me see if I can read it. Which glasses? This one or? Yeah, reading glasses. It fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I thank you in the name of the most ancient order of monks in the world. I thank you in the name of the mother of religions, and I thank you in the name of the millions and millions of Hindu people of all classes and sects. My thanks also to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. I am proud to belong to a nation which has sheltered the persecuted and the refugees of all religions and all nations of the earth. I am proud to tell you that we have gathered in our bosom the purest remnant of the Israelites who came to southern India and took refuge with us in the very year in which their holy temple was shattered to pieces by Roman tyranny. Which is the holy temple here? Solomon's temple. Where is it? Jerusalem. It was 70 AD that on the orders of the emperor of Rome, that building was destroyed. Only one thing remains over, a wall. In its place, a new temple has come up. That temple is sacred to all the three religions, Semitic religions. For the Jews, for Christianity, and for Muslims. Muhammad is supposed to have mounted a horse on top of the temple and he rode away into heaven. This is what the Muslims believe. And for the Jews, obviously it was their temple. And the Christians, Jerusalem was the place where Jesus first started preaching. 70 AD, 70 years after the birth of Jesus Christ, the temple was razed to the ground. Most of the Jews left Jerusalem. Some of them went to Egypt and to the west. Quite a good number of them came to the Syria, Damascus. And from Damascus, a good number came to India, to Surat. And from Surat, they came to Bombay. And from Bombay, they came further south to Kochi. There is a sizable Jewish population. It was there till recently in Kochi. Now that they have their own country, Israel, they have gone back. Otherwise, today in Kochi, you still find a couple of synagogues. They are prayer halls. And they were given shelter by the local Zamorin, who gave them protection. I am proud to, incidentally, what is the ambition of every Orthodox Jew in his life? Not ladies, only men. At least once to pay a visit to the wall. Stand before the wall, wear that cap, yarmulke, and then have a book in their hand, the Old Testament, go on Torah, go on reading it, bending their head. This is their custom. What is the similar thing for Muslims? At least once a lifetime, go to Kaaba, Mecca, where they go and stand before that stone and go on reading their kalma, their prayers. Christians, they don't go there that much now. Occasionally some of them go to Jerusalem, but they have their own places of worshipped around the world now. I am proud to belong to the religion which has sheltered and is still fostering the remnant of the grand Zoroastrian nation. Who are these people? What are they called these days?
Parsis.
Parsis. You know, Zoroastrians or Parsis lived on the western bank of river Saraswati. Across the river Saraswati was the settlement of the Vedic people. So the original people, Parsis, were Vedic people. When the river Saraswati dried up around 2000 BCE, they migrated westwards, settled down in Persia. And there came the prophet Zoroaster. And what is the divine being for the Parsis? The most sacred thing for them? Fire. Fire, Agni is so sacred, they don't burn their bodies. They don't want Agni to be polluted by dead bodies. So what do they do with the dead bodies? Tower of silence. They take it to the top of the tower, eagles come and eat away the flesh, and the bones and the skin are brought down, buried underground. There is a tower of silence in Bangalore, on the way to the new airport.
Yeah.
You look to the right, you find the board, Tower of Silence. Only Parsis are allowed to go in, nobody else. And they were given shelter here. Where are the Parsis these days? Most of them are in Bombay. You recently met one, Jamshedji, Ranjeet, Tata, a Parsi. You know, their contribution to India's growth in the 20th century is phenomenal. Who is the father of atomic energy in India? Homi Jahangir Bhabha, who was a nephew of the Tata family. They have done a lot for our country. I'll quote to you, brethren, a few lines from a hymn which I remember to have heard repeated by millions of human beings, obvious in India. As the different streams, having their sources in different places, all mingle their water in the sea, so, O Lord, the different paths which men take through different tendencies, various though they appear, crooked or straight, all lead to Thee. This is a poem by Pushpadanta. In other words, Sri Ramakrishna's famous statement, Jatomat, Tatopat. The present convention, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. Whosoever comes to me, through whatsoever form I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Ye yatha mam prapadyante, tas tathaiva bhajamyaham, mama vartmanu vartante, manushyaha partha sarvashaha. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent the whole nations to despair. Had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would be far more advanced than it is now. But their time is come, and I fervently hope that the bell that tolled this morning in honor of this convention may be the death knell of all fanaticism, of all persecutions with the sword or with the pen, and of all uncharitable feelings between persons wending their way to the same goal. Swamiji's speech, 2.5 minutes. He felt so emotionally exhausted, he could not stir from that place. He stood there. This time the audience stood up, started shouting, applauding. Some of them even went to the extent of whistling. And a very strange sight was seen. The women in the audience dressed in a very modest manner. What is the modesty according to the United States at the time? The women were allowed to show only their neck up and the two wrists. The rest of the body had to be covered. Have you seen the movie Gone with the Wind? There is a movie made at the time of the Civil War. Stories in the Civil War. They show you the ladies there. Why even in here, in the pictures which I have shown you, Mrs. Leon, Mrs. Hale, that is the way they were dressed. Such women, even exposing the shoes on their legs was immodest. Even the shoes had to be covered by the gown. They hitched up their skirts up to the knees, climbed up over the bench, started running over the benches, came to the rostrum, and they tried to reach out to the dress of Swamiji. Some of them could reach out to Swamiji's dress, started kissing it, and some were heard muttering, "Jesus, Jesus." Nobody was able to explain what had happened. But quite a few women said, "We saw God." Swamiji himself, what was his reaction? He was so tired he couldn't think of anything. Later he confessed to many people, "I don't know whether I spoke or somebody else spoke through me." What was his condition before he came there to speak? He was nervous, hands trembling, face flushing. Something seems to have overpowered him, and the words he said came pouring out of my mouth. He later said that in the United States, wherever he used to go to give lecture, previous night he used to hear some voice talking to him, and next morning he used to repeat whatever the voice said. Mind, of course. It was his own mind which used to frame all the sentences. He was emotionally exhausted. He stood there, and then once the noise subsided, he came back to his seat. Newspaper correspondents started rushing out. They had to make phone calls to their editors, filing in copy for the late evening newspapers. And they wrote only about Swami Vivekananda's speech. 3 or 4 newspapers next morning gave a leader, headline, "Appears as if the parliament has been convened only for the sake of this person." One newspaper created a big problem for some people. If this is the kind of people India produces, why are we sending missionaries to them? Why not we ask them to send missionaries to us, to educate us? What was the consequence? All American women who were supporting missionary activities in India stopped their contributions. Missionaries became very angry. This is the problem with this kind of popularity. Once you become popular, you arouse jealousy in others. And what is jealousy? According to Oscar Wilde, jealousy is the compliment paid by mediocrity to genius. If you are jealous of somebody, that person is superior to you. Otherwise, why should you be jealous? Whom does it hurt, jealousy? The person who is jealous is the one who is hurt. The other person may not even know what is happening. And Swamiji had to face the brunt of this for almost 1 full year, wherever he went. But he took it very calmly. But for that day, he was the big hero. That night, there was a reception given to all the delegates by the organizers. Swamiji went there, came back to the Leon family's house at 10 o'clock in the night, went upstairs to his room, tried to sleep in the bed. He went on tossing around. He couldn't get sleep. Then he climbed down from the bed, sat on the floor, and started thinking of what happened that day. There were 2 pictures in front of him. One was the opulence of the United States. Second picture, utter poverty of his own countrymen. It seems he wept for his countrymen. That is the patriot in him. Next morning onwards, the parliament started in the traditional manner of any conference. Swamiji gave in all 5 lectures. This was the most famous, but the most useful one was on the 19th. Paper on Hinduism. It gives you a definition of what is Hinduism. I would urge upon all of you to read that. Parliament lectures, 19th, a paper on Hinduism. If you are not Hindus, you will come to know what Hinduism is. You don't have to refer to that stupid book which has been banned by the high courts and is being burned. Wendinger, whatever, what is her name? You not heard of that? Making sensational news. Penguin has ordered all the copies so far printed of that book to be burnt because it talks rubbish about Hinduism. If you really want to know what Hinduism is, read this paper by Swamiji. If you are already Hindus, you better read it, because I don't know how many Hindus know about their own culture. What Swamiji said was that gods, all these things are secondary details. You remember that quotation? Each soul is potentially divine. The goal of life is to realize this both within and without. Do this either by work, karma yoga, by worship, bhakti yoga, or by psychic control, raja yoga, or philosophy, jnana yoga, by one or more of all of these. That is the whole of religion. Books, temples, gods, all these things are secondary details. They are not required. Where is the divine? Bhagavad Gita. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati. The good Lord resides in the hearts of all creatures. What did Kabir say? Moko kaha dhoondho bande, mai to tere paas hoon. The divine is within us. That is Vedanta. What Swamiji says there is a set of beliefs. The existence of a higher power. Name it what you will. Hindus accept a higher power. Then they accept rebirth. Karma. He gives a list of all these things. Any person who believes in them is already a Hindu. You remember I told you some American girls used to approach me saying that they want to become Hindus. I used to ask them to read this paper on Hinduism. They would come back. I would ask them, do you believe in all of them? Yes, Swamiji. Then I said, you are already a Hindu. System of beliefs. It is not a religion. What is the origin of the word Hindu?
The Indus.
Sindhu. What was Sindhu? A river. It is still there in Punjab, Pakistan, part of Punjab. Sindhu. Right? When the Greeks and later the Romans, all of them came to the western bank of Sindhu, they considered all the people living on the eastern bank of Sindhu as Sindhus. They called them Sindhus. And later Sindhu became Hindu. And the Romans could not pronounce H, they called them Indus. What did Hindu become? Indus. That is a name they call Sindhu by, the river Indus. And country became India. And we became Indians. That's all. Hinduism was never a religion like Islam or Christianity with a founder. All these ideas can be read in that book, Paper on Hinduism. The parliament went on till the 27th. And this is a group photograph of the East India group as it came to be called. Narasimhacharya was a man from Madras Nobody knew who he was. But he came there. He said he represents Vishishtadvaita. Next to him, Lakshmi Narayan, a Marwadi from Bombay, who was not a delegate but who attended the conference. Then you have Swamiji, Dharmapala, Veerchand, Gandhi. Several photographs were released at that time. This is the most famous photograph of Swamiji as a delegate to the Parliament of Religions. Please note, he is wearing the safa with the tail hanging over the shoulder. There is a studio photograph with an autograph in the left bottom. In the right bottom, a free translation of that Sanskrit shloka, Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva, etc., etc. Another photograph, standard pose, arms across the chest. To the right, autograph. To the left, a statement in Bengali with partial translation into English. Sitting on the chair, studio. To the right, autograph. To the left, again, a Bengali statement. And this was the closing scene, 27 September. The Parliament came to a close around lunchtime on the 27th of September. Swamiji was faced with a question now. He had become the hero of the Parliament. Should he go back to India? Purpose had been served. But he had made so many friends there among the Americans. All of them told him, don't rush back to India. Stay here, give lectures, train some people, then go back to India. Then they can carry on your work after you leave. Swamiji agreed. He had two families in Chicago with whom he could stay. The Leon family and the Hale family. He started dividing his time between the two families. A lady approached him in the Parliament of Religions. Sarah Farmer, a very rich lady who had been left a huge fortune by her father. She belonged to the northern part of New York, almost bordering on the state of Maine. She met Swamiji and said, I have a big farm called Green Acre around my house. I want to have a mini Parliament of Religions in April 1894. Are you available? Swamiji said, yes, I am available. So she made a note of that. He did attend that. Meanwhile, people started inviting him to give lectures in Chicago. He became very popular in Chicago. And then he started going out to the nearby areas until somebody suggested to him, don't move around like this, engage a lecture bureau. The lecture bureau will organize lectures for you. They will take a small commission. Swamiji signed a contract in Chicago with Slayton Lecture Bureau without realizing that they were fleecing him right and left. He didn't read the fine print of the contract. It said the collection for every lecture, 75% would go to Slayton Lecture Bureau. The effort had to be put in by Swamiji. Swamiji started realizing, I go to give so many lectures, so many people come, there is so much of contribution, why is it I don't get much money out of that? You know, this giving money to attend lectures is a typical Christian custom. They have that custom every Sunday morning when they go to church. After the completion of the prayer in the morning and the sermon, while they are coming out, there is a box. The padre, the priest would be standing there. He would be wishing everybody goodbye. Then they would put some money into the box. They are used to that. Even today, as a matter of fact, I had some difficulty in the United States during one of my visits. In one of the lectures, there were some Americans in the audience who wanted to give me money. I said, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to. I am on a tourist visa. I am not allowed to earn money there. I told them, if you want to give it to Yoga Bharati. They did give it to Yoga Bharati. So Swamiji realized that he is being cheated, but nothing could be done. He went on a lecture tour in the east and the midwest of United States, and this went on till the month of March. In the month of March, he came to Detroit. Michigan State? Detroit. And in Detroit, he stayed with a family, American family. And in the month of April, he came to Greenacre. These are some of the photographs of Greenacre. This is a group which had come to Greenacre, and this is another smaller group. You can see one thing from this photograph. Swamiji's face appears to be very tired. Too much of traveling, too much of lecturing. Another group photograph. Only when he returned to Detroit and later to New York did he recover. This is a photo in Chicago, 1894. He seems to have recovered. She was the hostess of Swamiji in Detroit. And in Detroit, for the first time, the prejudices against Swamiji came to the fore. 3 groups started attacking him. Christian missionary groups. I told you already their income had gone down. The second group, Brahmo Samaj. Brahmo Samaj had sent a representative, Pratap Chandra Mazumdar, who till that time was a hero for Americans because he used to praise Christ a lot. Now people completely forgot about Mazumdar. They were all talking of Swamiji. He became jealous. He started anti-propaganda. The third group, Theosophists. Theosophical Society was in doldrums at that time. You must have heard of the Theosophical Society, right? Yes, no? No? Well, that speaks volumes for Theosophical Society. It was started by a Russian lady, Madame Blavatsky. Where? In New York. Then it made its way to India. Its international headquarters are still in Chennai. They have their own compound, their own temple, all kinds of things. They believe in Mahatmas and Kutubis who live in the Himalayas, from whom they derive inspiration. In that sense, they are very similar to the Kriya Yoga people who believe Mahavatar Babaji, more than 1,000 years old, is still alive in the Himalayas. He sends messages of Kriya Yoga to them. Well, if you can believe this, you can believe that. Or if you believe that, you can believe this. When Blavatsky died, there was a power struggle. There were 4 candidates, they fought among themselves. The matter went to the court in New York. That is where Theosophical Society had been registered. One of these 4 people says he has got a mandate from the Mahatmas and Kutumis of the Himalayas, a typed letter. The judge was surprised. He got it examined. It turned out to be a forgery. Theosophical Society fell flat in the United States. They became jealous of Swami Vivekananda. Why? Because Americans deserted them, came to Swami Vivekananda. Swamiji did not retaliate. This lady did all the job on his behalf. She protected him. There were many other women of Detroit who protected him for almost 1 full year. Then Swamiji resumed his journeys. Meanwhile, another gentleman in Detroit came forward and got him released from the contract with the Slayton Lecture Bureau. Now Swamiji was on his own, and he suddenly found that the collection of money from his lectures increased. He was in New York in the month of October 1894. He was the guest of Dr. Louis Janes, not a medical doctor but a philosopher, the president of the Brooklyn Ethical Association. He introduced Swamiji to a medical doctor, Dr. Guernsey. Dr. Guernsey looked at Swamiji and told him, something wrong with you. Your health is not all right. You have been running around a lot. Why don't you stick to one place, give lectures, make disciples? Swamiji asked him, which place? Dr. Ranjeet told him, what is wrong with New York? Settle down in New York. Swamiji agreed to settle down in New York, and November 1894, the first Vedanta Society in the United States in New York came into existence. Mind you, even before Ramakrishna Mutt came into existence, the Vedanta Society of New York was already functioning, 1894. Now, Swamiji had a more comfortable time because he had somebody to look after him. A Russian emigre, a former theosophist, came to New York from Russia, settled down there. He heard Swamiji's lectures and became his companion and housekeeper. It was in New York and in the nearby areas that Swamiji happened to meet a large number of very prominent American citizens. So tomorrow, I am going to introduce you to some of these very prominent people. These are all photos taken at the time, and we start with Robert Ingersoll tomorrow. So tomorrow will be dedicated to introducing these people, and then 1895 May, when he went to Thousand Island Park. Harihi Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.